Hello. In this session, I'm going to be talking about technology innovation and disruption. A fundamental aspect of any technology innovation and disruption is that of technology S curves. So over the years, what we have been able to do is based on extensive research, divide any technology progression into three stages: the initiation, the growth, and the maturity. The time it takes for any technology to be initiated, grow, and mature varies from industry to industry, product to product, and service to service. So you really can't say that everything has to be done in 3 years or 5 years or 8 years. It really depends upon the context of use and the kind of a project and product that we are talking about. Nevertheless, when a technology gets initiated, grows, and matures, it has to be revived. It has to be revived so that we can extend the product life cycle of that particular technology. Now, there are different ways in which we can revive this. If we are kind of innovating around dimensions that we all appreciate, consumers appreciate, all the stakeholders appreciate, then it is really an example of a sustaining technology because it's sustaining innovation where we're not bringing in any new value proposition. We are just enhancing it. A new version is being introduced and it's going to extend the life cycle. But there are other times when really a disruption takes place, something new comes in, and a new S curve is being initiated. When those kind of things happen, there is always two kinds of gaps. One is a technology discontinuity gap, and then there's a time discontinuity gap, because there's always a time period where the mature technology is established in the marketplace, but then the new technology is underperforming the mature technology. It's perhaps cheaper, it's giving more benefits, but it is not mature enough. It has just been initiated in the marketplace. So this gap, the time and technology discontinuity gap that we have between a mature innovation, mature technology, and a new innovation that is coming into being, is a perfect time for any new product or service to enter into the marketplace. And this discontinuity is very, very interesting only if we were able to predict it. There are several examples out there in the world, and in this particular session, I have snippets from a lecture I delivered very recently to a group of technology enthusiasts out in Europe, and I have edited that to illustrate some of the examples of innovation and disruption. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much, and then hopefully we'll have a wonderful conversation and a discussion later on. Typically, what we do is let's use cell phones as an example to think in terms of disruptive technologies and technology S-curves. When when cell phones were first introduced, we had non-smart, Nokia kind of phones, right? Certain things happen in the marketplace which take certain companies out for some reason, and certain other companies are not really able to work on their strengths. And I'll talk about all four: Nokia, BlackBerry, Apple, and Android. The four main platforms that we have. Nokia produced such a beautiful product, but they could never, ever move into the smart cases. They resisted movement into smartphones, if you remember. Okay? To the extent they said, we are going to create our own operating system. So they went and bought a system that was developed by some folks in England called Symbian, right? So they adopted Symbian. Now, Symbian was very interesting. It was at a very early stage of innovation where it allowed you to check your emails on your phones in a very archaic manner. Essentially, what they were doing is, if you look at the technology S curve, you have the maturity. In the maturity, they're trying to extend that maturity, right? But people were ready for something more. They really wanted something else. And that something else was being offered by BlackBerry. Suddenly I had a nicer interface, I had keyboards and all that stuff, wonderful. All the companies were adopted BlackBerry, excellent product. Pointing devices. So, and then something interesting was happening in the marketplace. BlackBerry, one of the reasons people would stick with BlackBerry was security. Because they said, our data resides in RIM headquarters in Canada. Right? So nobody has access to it, we have access to it. China came around and said, no, we need a proxy server here. We need access to that data because suddenly institutions, governments, nation states began realizing amount of data that was being transmitted and there's no way they could do surveillance. Right? How do they know what you are doing? So surveillance was a very important aspect for any nation. It is, right? Like it or you don't. So they wanted them to put proxy servers in China. Saudi Arabia wanted the same thing. India wanted the same thing. And therein, they lost their competitive advantage. And they never were able to compete with Apple, which came around that time. Right? Android, which came around that time. And then you had the Amazon phone, which died. Nobody used. They stopped the line as well. Now, an interesting thing is happening today between the battle that you see between not necessarily the Android, between Samsung and Apple. One, which is using an open source kind of Android operating system. Microsoft's gone. As far as the cellular business is concerned, they haven't been able to make a mark for whatever reason. And Apple. Today, China banned the sale of Apple 6 and 6 Plus because they claim that the design of Apple 6 and 6 Plus is infringement of copyright by a local company. So they said, we're not going to sell it. Now, they can obviously appeal and carry on, but who cares? Because in September they're going to launch a new design anyways. Right? So these things happen. Now, all these discussions that we are having are of a product that has matured. Right? A disruption is waiting to happen in this business. Now, what that disruption would be, we can speculate. Right? Clearly, if you look at the S-curve, there's an initiation, growth, and companies and products which did not make a mark just fell aside. The maturity is taking place, and now, after the growth, it is mature. Now, when you look at the time and technology discontinuity, that is when a new product is going to come into the marketplace. Now, it is anybody's guess as to what that new product would be. If you look into the trends, now, and that is the mega trends that you look at, if you look into the trends of what Facebook has done, what Apple has done, and what many other companies have done, they've gone and acquired virtualization companies, virtual reality, virtualization companies, they've gone and done that. So I would postulate that you will have an iWatch like this, with a tap of a button, up going to pop up a virtual screen, right, with something embedded in my glasses which will allow me to hear, which is possible, right? Technology is here. And if I want to dial someone, I'm going to do this on a virtual reality screen, right? I can FaceTime here, listen here, right? Think about it. Now, I'm just speculating. This may not happen. Something else may happen. But the fact is that miniaturization of internet and the Internet of Things and the affordability and the cost that is associated with these products has made it possible. So we are at a stage where the time and the technology discontinuity is ripe enough for an innovation to come and disrupt the way in which the traditional cellular phone business has been Right. Right. Now, having said that, companies are not going to do that. Apple's not certainly going to do that, or Google's not going to do that. They're going to wait for the right opportunity. Maybe they have already developed that technology, but they're not going to market it just yet. They're going to do it when the time is right. So they're taking advantage of what is happening right now. So maybe this is how it's going to happen for all you know. So to answer your question, I had to go a long-winded way, but that's what really it is, because you are extending your growth as much as you can, because then you are working on economies of scale. You already have a product. You make a few extra things. Apple is very good with this, right? Because what they typically do is every other year they do some minor modifications. When they had phone 5S when it came out, if you remember, 5S was 3 different colors, lighter, cheaper, a little bit more innovation, so a little bit of a hype. Nothing else happened. And then they came up with a new technology, which is 6, right? Fingerprint, thumbprint, all that stuff, retina, eye, all that, 9 yards. So now, but Apple is not competing with anybody but Samsung, I believe. Because Samsung has gone and customized the phone and they made it cheaper. Right? But Samsung is not a disruption either. It is a battle going on. Now, howsoever people may argue, but the market share has remained the same. So it's claimed that the Android market share is at about 70%. Apple is at about 30%. Apple, when it came with the first version of the iPhone, was at about 30. They went and occupied about 30% of the market space, and they have maintained it. A percentage point up and down, that happens. But they've kind of maintained it. How Android has gained space is through getting Microsoft out and Nokia out and BlackBerry out. Right? So they've actually occupied their space. And they kind of maintained that as well. So it's a bigger market share, of course, that they have. But I believe that a disruption is around the corner. It might happen any day. And that will be the most exciting part. And I think it's going to be, it may be a totally different company for all you know, but I believe these companies that we are talking about are ripe enough, mature enough to bring this new innovation, in my opinion.